Isn't it incredible how far video games have come? I mean, 25 years ago, the discourse around video games was that they were all this violent, degenerate, bad behavior breeding pieces of media. While there are quite a few exceptions to that rule at the time, the general public just didn't really acknowledge them. I think that's because the strong, intimate storytelling was lumped in with like your Mortal Kombats and your Dooms, so it just kind of went on and wasn't even noticed. Then, as more and more people came into the industry, they came in with stories to tell, and weren't afraid to create games that wore their hearts on their sleeves. Beautiful, moving stories speaking about hyper-personal experiences that can only be achieved through games. That's because games are unique. Unique because they let you walk in the shoes of the people who created them and allow them to share perspective that may be completely foreign to you. And that's the mentality and energy that defines my love of 2020's indie darling, Spiritfarer. A beautiful, captivating story where you're tasked with being the guide for spirits to their final resting place. So grab that hanky, ladies and gentlemen, because this puppy is an emotional roller coaster. The core objective of Spiritfarer is as follows. You meet a spirit, complete some of their quest lines, and then send them over to their final resting place through the Everdoor. But that's kind of just an oversimplification of everything this game has to offer. What I really like about Spiritfarer's gameplay is it takes inspiration from a lot of different genres, but never overcomplicates it. You have bits of farming and life sims where you're always trying to grow and create different resources to help you along your journey and keep the spirits on your boat happy. It also takes a lot of the anxiety out of this genre by removing the penalties if you don't have a chance to maintain something. You haven't watered a plant in like 6 days? Just give that ass some water and it'll start growing like nothing ever happened. There are shades of 2D platformers where you're given all your basic tools for traversal to make moving around satisfying and pretty fluid, but where it really shines is through its Metroidvania vibes. You have this huge world that you're sailing around, but you'll notice that quickly there isn't a lot of room for movement, and the only way to get through to other parts of the world is to upgrade your ship with your available resources. But here's the kicker. Unlike traditional Metroidvanias, your progression is not just tied to your character's abilities. It's beautifully tied and integrated into your spirit companions. Your companions give you access to materials that are just the lifeblood of progression. For the most part, these materials set off a chain reaction of progression. Wait, I have limestone, so that means I can build this, which then produces this, and then progresses this spirit, which means I have access to this ship upgrade, which means I now open up this third of the map, which now means I can beat the game. Yeah, it's that easy. While this loop is satisfying and fun, it doesn't take long for you to start noticing the cracks and repetition. Certain things like having to drop your boat every time you want to get on an island, getting bounced out of the map every time you select a destination, having to select no each time you're close to an event, and the constant backtracking for one single item gets to be such a pain in the ass. These seem like nitpicks, but if you plan on getting all your spirits safely through the Everdoor, this shit will pile up quick. I think the root of this issue is that the game is 20-ish hours long, and it doesn't really need to be. I think you streamline a couple processes here and there and reduce some of the build requirements, and this game would still pack the same punch. While the gameplay may be the weakest aspect of this game, that doesn't mean it's at all a hindrance. In fact, it's essential in setting the foundation for some incredible emotional payoffs. Spiritfarer just has this thing going on. Aura, vibe, atmosphere, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, Spiritfarer's got it. It's set in this constant dreamlike state that kind of blends reality with the world of spirits. This is accomplished through incredible music and art design that kind of acts as a companion with you throughout your entire journey. You have these Studio Ghibli looking character designs with these fluid, joyful animations. I mean, for a game about death, it really ends up radiating joy and happiness. Your spirit characters are all so incredibly unique and drawn so beautifully they match their incredibly outlandish personalities. Even their hug animations fit the character perfectly, and you can really feel the warmth and emotion each time that action is performed. In addition to all of that, they each have their own individual theme that does a really good job of conveying their story and personality of each and every single character. You're also jumping from island to island that all have these very unique but familiar feels to them. It's because they're all representing Stella's story in some way. These incredible Japanese-inspired islands with feudal buildings and pan flute solos just going in the entire time. Each section of the map has its own distinct personality that's conveyed to you through brilliant environmental aesthetics and immersive music scores. No piece of environment or music ever feels out of place. Ever. It's all so well blended together and seamlessly integrated into each part of the game. I think the meteor showers are what really did it for me. Like, the world flashes in this incredible Aurora Borealis looking thing. The meteors start falling and then too goddamn good. And that's just one example of how Spiritfarer does this type of environment building. Throughout the entire game, you'll be floored over and over again by just the presentation of the game. Speaking of presentation, I don't know why I really picked up on this, but this game is just so horizontal. Like, it's so long with these incredibly wide horizons in the background. The game is never afraid just to fill the screen with emptiness. When you visit an island, when you go to bed, when you're fishing, and especially when you're approaching the Everdoor, the game wants you to feel really small in the context of your surroundings. It's the video game equivalent of just letting it breathe, letting you just take in your surroundings and giving you a moment just to breathe it in. All accompanied by an absolutely stellar soundtrack. And it does something that I am an absolute sucker for. When the songs in the soundtrack borrow bits and pieces of the main theme, oh, I love it. All the songs that play while you're at sea are especially good at this. Just having the main theme jump in for a couple seconds. And then gracefully bow out. All of the things I mentioned build out an incredibly beautiful game from both a visual and storytelling perspective, and are the perfect complement to the best aspect of Spiritfarer, its story. Dying is something a lot of people fear. Day in and day out, it's subconsciously floating around our brains. The thing that makes death so scary for people, I think, is that there's just so much unknowns around it. Like, what do we really think is going to happen after you die? Spiritfarer somehow managed to quell a lot of those fears for me. This is because Spiritfarer addresses death as a celebration of your life's experiences, instead of capitalizing on your fear of loss. You play as Stella, who obviously is the Spiritfarer, and it's her job to accompany spirits to their journey to find themselves, and eventually you send them on their way through the Everdoor. You're by these spirits' sides, they discuss the joys and sorrows of their lives, and just spilling their guts to you at every opportunity. The cool thing about Stella is she really isn't there to solve the spirits' problems. She's more there just to act as a companion, a reliable shoulder to cry on, an ear to vent to. These spirit stories are all presented in the context of the world of Spiritfarer. So there are a few metaphors to unpack here, but none of them are really like that outlandish, where maybe you're spending hours after the game looking up what the hell just happened. And that's a really tough middle ground to nail down in a game about death. You want to present it in a pleasing way, but you don't want to get so wrapped up in a metaphor that you lose sight of the story you're trying to tell. I'm in love with the storytelling in this game. Every spirit story moves at its own pace, and they each have their own unique tribulations and resolutions. You never feel like you're experiencing the same story beats twice, which really isn't easy when you have 11 different characters. Additionally, these spirit stories are all perfectly woven in with Stella's personal journey, which results in an incredibly tight and rewarding narrative for her. Once these characters resolve their issues, you take them to the Everdoor and send them on their way. God damn, these scenes are some of the most touching pieces I've ever experienced in any piece of media. Hearing these characters discuss their final thoughts and come to terms with their deaths is just so touching. I mean, I'm normally not a huge crier, but I caught myself tearing up for, I'm pretty sure, every one of these spirits' journeys end. This dialogue is all packaged in with some beautiful presentation and honestly cinematography. It makes sure to evoke all the emotions, all the pain, joy, tears, and laughter the spirit has felt through the course of their life, and supercharge it into one of the most touching and emotional payoffs. Then they put a nice little bow on it. After your friend completes their journey, the camera pulls upward, lets you sit there and breathe. Pretty good, huh? Spiritfarer was not at all on my radar for 2020. So you'll notice I actually didn't even mention it in my end of the year recap. But after playing through this game, it is easily in my top 5 best games of that year. In fact, yep, just gonna click right here. And yep, you can just do this and bada boom. Spiritfarer is a game that'll hit you right in the soul. It's a beautiful story and atmosphere told through some pretty solid gameplay. I never feel like I'm enduring the gameplay to get to the story bits, and even your most mundane tasks still feel relevant to your role as the Spiritfarer. Sure, you'll roll your eyes at the fact that you have to go back and forth across the map to get that one single material that's been a thorn in your side the entire playthrough. But within seconds, the game wraps you up in its beautiful world, characters, and music. And at that point, it's not that big of a deal to sail halfway across the ocean. At the end of the day, there's so much that Spiritfarer has to offer, and all you have to do is take its hand and let it guide you through. That's why I give Spiritfarer 7 oak planks out of 4 Susans.
And I'll take your hand and guide you through all the steps one